Hello everyone. In the previous part, we started to see how we can give color to our site. You will see, there are still many possibilities to improve this. In particular, we will see in this part, how we can arrange our background image, and, also, how to add shading effects. Fine, let's go. At the moment, and by default, our image of the background of the banner is placed with its upper left corner corresponding to the upper left corner of the banner, and if your image is larger than this, we don't let's see only a part of it. So let's see how we can remedy this. First, we can fix our image. For the banner, it is not necessary, it is better that it moves with this one. But, let's take the example of a background image of our whole site, like this for example. So, it can be interesting that the background, our image, remains fixed on the screen if we scroll our page, in height or in width. Like this. This will give the effect that your page slides on the background, and it will avoid the connections between the duplication of the background image. Well, the property to attach an image is background attachment, which can take two values. Either fixed, the background image will remain fixed, or scroll, the background image will scroll with its element. It is the default value. Why have the value scroll, since it is the default value? Because of inheritance. Remember. Suppose you define the background image of the site, so for the tag, body, in a fixed image. And that, you have other images as background of certain frame, like in our banner. The banner being in the body, it will therefore inherit these properties, and therefore also the background attachment fixed. But, the image of our banner must scroll with the banner, therefore, we will have to add the function, background attachment to it with the value, scroll, which will take precedence over the value, fixed, of the whole page. Well, in this example, the images used are, at a minimum, the same size as the area they need to cover, but, we can use smaller images. What's going to happen? By default, this image will be repeated as many times as needed to cover the entire background location. We can modify this effect thanks to the function, background repeat. It can take several values, no repeat, the background will not be repeated, and the image will therefore be unique on the page, the rest will be defined by the function, background color, or, in white by default. Repeat X, the background will be repeated only horizontally, only on its line. Repeat Y, the background will only be repeated vertically, so only on its column. And, repeat, the background will be repeated horizontally and vertically, tiled, which is the default function. Let's see now an interesting function for a non-repeating background. This is the function, background position, which will allow us to position our image in its space. This function will be very useful for us to position the image of the banner in order to see the part that interests us. The value of this function can be defined in relative terms, that is, the position of the upper left corner of our image in relation to its frame. Or by name. For the relative position, we will give two displacement values, expressed in pixels, the first for the horizontal displacement, and the second, for the vertical displacement, like this. Note that the values can be negative, this will give a displacement outside the frame. The out-of-frame part will be invisible. We can also name the displacement with the values. Top, to position the image relative to its top edge. Bottom, relative to its bottom edge. Left, relative to its left edge. And right, relative to its right edge. Finally, we have center, which will center our image within its frame. We can combine the locations, like for example, top right, our image will be positioned relative to its top right corner. Of course, don't combine top with bottom or left with right. There is a super property, which will set all the properties for a background image at once. This great property is background. In a single function, we will be able to set all the desired values for our background image. For example, I want a simple image, which will remain permanently in the upper right corner of our page. I would define this thanks to the function background, with as values its URL, and the values fixed, no repeat, top and right. Like this. You are not obliged to put all the values. Those not defined will be replaced by the default values, or by parent values which would be defined in parent tags. Now let's go back to our site, and so, for our banner, I'm going to replace the function background image with the function background, for which I keep the URL of our image, and I add the values no repeat and center to center my image in the banner. Let's see the result in the browser. It's already much better. Of course, you will have to adjust the image of your banner with personal values, according to your image, and the part you want to see. Well, if you remember, I mentioned in the previous part that my banner was composed of 2 images. Yes, it is possible to combine several images for a single background. To do this, we will simply declare them one after the other, separated by a comma, in the function background. Attention! The images will be displayed in the order of their declaration. The first will be in the foreground, the second, in the background, and so on. So let's see that. I will add this image as a foreground to our banner. So I also place it in the content subfolder. Then, I modify the function background, placing it first in the list of values, and I add for it the values no repeat bottom left, and let's not forget the comma between the 2 pictures. We should now have this definition for the header tag. Let's save our code and see the result in our browser. Indeed, the first image is superimposed on the next one and placed to the left of the banner. Well, now let's see a property inserted only from CSS3. The shadows. Shadows can be applied to all elements. For everything text, we will use the function text shadow, and for everything else, images, frames, we will use the function box shadow. They both work exactly the same way. These 2 functions must contain 4 values, which are: first, the horizontal offset, expressed in pixels. The vertical offset, also expressed in pixels. These 2 values can also be negative. In positive, it shifts the shadow respectively to the right and down, and in negative, to the left and up. Third, shadow feathering, still in pixels. At 0 the shadow will not be feathered. At the value equal to the displacement, the shadow will be gradient on its size. At higher values, the gradient will be stronger inside. And finally, fourth, the color of the shadow, which can be entered by its name, in hexadecimal, or in RGB, as for a normal color. As a bonus, for just the function box shadow, we can add a 5th value, inset, which will place the shadow inside the element. Let's see it in our site. I'm going to place a dark blue, navy shadow for our banner, so I add the function box shadow with the value 20px, 20px, 20px and navy for the header. I will put shadow to our title in black, so black, and therefore the function text shadow and as value 3 times 5px, and black for the tag h1. A dark blue shadow to our paragraph, either text shadow 3 times 3px, and navy for the p tag. Finally, since now we have a background image, I will remove the background color from the em tag, our name. This will also inherit the paragraph shading. So, let's save our code and see the result in our browser. It's slowly starting to take shape. In the next part, we will see how we can add borders and also transparency to our elements. Thank you for your attention. Katerina and Patrick.